Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right in today because we're taking a really close look at a super ingrained myth in the business world. The whole all-powerful CEO trope. We all have this image in our heads, right? The visionary leader sitting at the top of the food chain, just effortlessly moving mountains with a single command. But, well, if you actually look closely at the data and the deep research on executive leadership, the reality is far more complex, and honestly, it's way more fascinating. It really begs the question, what actually makes a CEO truly powerful? Is leadership really just about having the authority to call the shots? Or is it about orchestrating the environment to ensure those shots actually hit their target? You can kind of think about it like being handed the keys to a high-performance sports car. Having the keys is great. It means you're in the driver's seat. But the keys alone absolutely do not guarantee you'll reach your destination safely or at all. There are two distinct forces at play here, and understanding how they interact is basically the absolute secret to effective leadership. Section 1. Autonomy, the mandate to decide. Okay, let's dive into this because this is the first core concept that most people completely mistake for the entirety of leadership. Autonomy in the C-suite is essentially the raw mandate to act. It's the freedom from day-to-day micromanagement, whether that pressure is coming from an overbearing board of directors or just that heavy inherited operational inertia of, this is how we've always done things. A CEO with high autonomy has this unencumbered ability to shift resources, rip up and completely redefine structural hierarchies, and pivot the entire company's strategy. This is the part of leadership that grants you those keys to the car. It frees the leader up to make the massive, sweeping calls that define the whole organization's direction. It's incredibly important. Obviously, you literally can't lead if your hands are tied. But here is exactly why autonomy desperately needs strategic direction. Raw power is incredibly dangerous when it's unguided. Going back to our analogy, having the keys to that high-performance car doesn't mean a single thing if you don't have a map. If you just hit the gas without knowing where you're going, you aren't leading. You're just creating motion. And this is exactly where so many executives stumble. They completely mistake the freedom to make decisions with the ability to make the right decisions. Section 2. Intentionality, the strategic engine. This brings us to the missing half of effective leadership, the map. Intentionality is the deliberate alignment of every single action with a defined core purpose. It's the force of implementation. This is the crucial element that stops leaders from mistaking mere activity for actual progress. You see, when a CEO is truly intentional, they don't just sign off on a project and cross their fingers hoping for the best. No, they actively orchestrate the cultural, the financial, and the political conditions that are absolutely necessary for that project to survive and thrive. To really grasp this, we need to see what it looks like in practice. There are three concrete arenas where an intentional CEO actually applies this strategic engine to ensure their vision survives the daily grind of corporate life. So let's break these down one by one. First up is cultural transformation. The quote here really hits the nail on the head. Treat culture as an engineering problem, not an abstract goal. An intentional CEO isn't just walking around the office vaguely saying they're pro-diversity or pro-innovation. They get right down into the machinery. They intentionally redesign the hiring pipelines. They restructure how interview panels are actually formed. They'll even go as far as tying executive bonuses directly to specific retention metrics. They build the culture mathematically and structurally, ensuring that their intent is hardwired right into the company's systems. The second arena is strategic resource allocation. Look, instead of taking the easy road and spreading the budget thin across all departments just to keep everyone happy, an intentional CEO identifies the one innovation engine that truly drives the future of the company. And then they aggressively fund it while ruthlessly cutting funding elsewhere. But the absolute key to intentionality here is that they clearly communicate the why to the entire organization. They manage that inevitable friction by making sure everyone understands the long-term map. And the third example is communication cadence. An intentional CEO doesn't just check the leadership box by holding a generic quarterly town hall. They meticulously curate their physical presence, their language, and their everyday approvals to constantly reinforce the company's North Star. Every single interaction matters. They make sure that even something as mundane as the way they decline a meeting or approve an expense report fundamentally reflects the company's long-term values. Every interaction keeps that car right on the route. Section 3. The danger of imbalance. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when you separate these two traits, creating massive friction. So what actually happens when a leader has one but completely lacks the other? Well, you get a really dangerous imbalance. Autonomy without intentionality results in chaos. On the flip side, intentionality without autonomy results in stagnation. To go back to our car analogy, that first scenario is basically the CEO driving a brand new sports car straight into a ditch at 100 miles an hour just because they completely refuse to look at a map. The second scenario, that's a CEO sitting in a car with a perfectly planned GPS route, only to realize the car doesn't even have an engine. Both fail, but they fail for entirely different reasons. Let's look at the left side first. Autonomy without intentionality leads to incredibly erratic, highly reactive decision-making. Because the CEO has the raw power to change things, they have the autonomy to just cut right through the bureaucracy, but they have absolutely no focused intent. So what do? They end up constantly chasing new, shiny, completely unaligned initiatives. One week it's a massive pivot to AI, the next week it's a total structural reorganization. Because this raw power is entirely unguided, it actually erodes the company's stability. It just turns into destructive, reactive chaos. Conversely, looking at the right side, intentionality without autonomy is a recipe for deep, deep frustration and stagnation. Here, the CEO might have a brilliant, coherent, highly intentional plan, but they completely lack the executive weight, the autonomy to actually smash through the roadblocks in front of them. They find themselves totally unable to remove the obstacles that prevent that plan from coming to life. Whether those obstacles are outdated legacy processes, toxic leadership within the ranks, or those rigidly defended departmental silos. They have the map for sure, but their hands are literally tied to the steering wheel. Section 4, Achieving Executive Symbiosis. Let's move to and see how this builds, because to truly synthesize these concepts, you realize you just can't have one without the other.
You desperately need autonomy to break through the status quo bias and cut through all that noise of corporate bureaucracy. But you absolutely must have intentionality to ensure that your decisions don't lead the company right off a cliff. And I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful summarizing thought from the source material. One defines the scope of the CEO's power. The other defines the quality of the CEO's legacy. Autonomy gives you the scope. It tells the world exactly how much you can do. But intentionality, that strategic engine, that deliberate alignment of your actions, that is what determines if what you did actually mattered. That is your legacy.
And right before we wrap up, I want to abruptly but hopefully smoothly turn the lens right onto you and take this massive corporate concept and apply it to your everyday life. Think about it. How do you make decisions about your health? Do you feel you have the autonomy to make your own choices, to cut through the constant noise of fad diets and unsolicited advice? And if you do have that autonomy, are you actually using it with intentionality? Are you aligning your daily habits with your long-term legacy? It's a pretty provocative thought to leave you with, isn't it? Because whether you're running a Fortune 500 company or just managing your own life, the balance of autonomy and intentionality is literally everything. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.